The server room buzzed with the low, constant hum of cooling fans. Rows of blinking lights painted the walls in patterns only I understood. I sat cross-legged on the floor, my laptop open on my knees, lines of code running across the screen. This was where I belonged, underground, surrounded by machines that always listened, unlike people upstairs. The plaque outside said Harrison Financial Group, a name that carried weight in every investment circle. A $2.3 billion firm that lived and breathed through the cables I maintained. My job title was Systems Administrator, but my family had another name for it: tech support. Above me were 5 floors of polished glass, mahogany, and expensive suits. My father, the CEO, had the corner office with a skyline view. My brother David ran his innovation division, which mostly meant playing with investors' money. My sister Catherine headed strategy, always armed with PowerPoints and confidence. They lived in the sunlight. I worked in the shadows, keeping their empire online. The intercom clicked. David's voice, sharp and impatient, echoed through. "Emma, you down there?" "Yeah," I said, not looking up. Dad's computer froze again. "He's got a call in 10. Get up here." "I'm in the middle of a system update. Give me 20 minutes. No, now." The line went dead. Typical. I closed the terminal window, packed up my laptop, and climbed the 5 flights of stairs. The elevator had been out for weeks. Maintenance request ignored naturally. Without me, this place would stop functioning in a day. My father's office looked the same as it had when I was a kid. Dark oak walls. Framed photos of him shaking hands with governors and senators. The smell of leather and old money. He didn't look up as I entered, just pointed at the monitor while finishing a phone call. The screen wasn't frozen. He'd tried to open a document in software he'd uninstalled himself. "I fixed it in under a minute. All set," I said. He nodded once, eyes still on the call. Not even a thank you. I stepped into the hallway and nearly bumped into Catherine. Her heels clicked against the marble. "Oh, good. You're here," she said, thrusting her tablet at me. "It's not syncing my email. I've got a presentation in an hour." I glanced at the settings. She'd disabled Cloud Sync. Fixed in 20 seconds. Done. Finally. I've been fighting with that for days. She started walking off, already typing. "Oh, and Emma." "Don't schedule any maintenance tomorrow at 2. The shareholders meeting. We need everything perfect. I already did. Sent the memo last week." "Good. And maybe dress a bit more professional tomorrow. We'll have important people in the building." She was gone before I could respond. I stood alone in the quiet hallway, holding my laptop. Jeans, polo shirt, sneakers. My uniform. Theirs was silken suits. Tomorrow they'd stand before the board, boasting about growth and strategy. I'd sit in the corner making sure the projector worked. They never understood what I did. To them, I was just the girl who fixed their Wi-Fi. But they didn't know that every email, every spreadsheet, every trade order passed through my servers. They didn't know that I had root access to every system in this building. And they definitely didn't know the truth my grandfather had written in a letter 3 years earlier. "Emma, if you're reading this, the assets of Harrison Financial Group are now legally yours." My hands had trembled when I first read it. My grandfather, Thomas Harrison, the man who built this empire from nothing, had left his children the company, but he'd left me the money. The $500 million portfolio the company managed was mine. He'd written more. "Your father manages well but owns poorly. Your brother is reckless. Your sister is impatient. You see the systems behind the curtain. You understand how power really works." He'd trusted me with the assets because I understood structure, logic, and silence. For 3 years, I'd kept the secret. For 3 years, I'd let them believe they ran everything. And for 3 years, I'd watched. I knew about David's side investments. The ones hidden under shell accounts labeled innovation initiatives. I knew about Catherine's expansion plans that had already failed twice in simulation models. I knew about my father's quiet panic as the firm's returns slipped year after year. Tomorrow, they were planning to fix all that with one bold move, a $200 million transfer into a new high-risk fund. David's idea? He called it the Harrison Innovation Fund. It sounded exciting. It was suicide. and they needed my approval to execute it, though they didn't know it yet. I opened my laptop and pulled up the internal documents, spreadsheets, forecasts, risk analyses that weren't analyses at all, just wishful math. The projections assumed 20 years of growth from 6 months of data. Correlation risks ignored. Hedge plans non-existent. If I hadn't owned the portfolio, I might have just laughed. But I did own it, and I wasn't going to let them gamble it away. That night, I stayed late in the server room, watching the lights blink. The hum of the cooling fans was the only sound, my world, my sanctuary. At 6 a.m., I was back, running diagnostics before the shareholders' meeting. The conference room needed to run flawlessly. I checked the projector, tested the video link, calibrated the data feed. At 7:30, David walked in, coffee in hand. "You're here early," making sure your presentation doesn't crash. "Appreciate it." He paused, frowning at his laptop. "Can you look at this?" "The model keeps throwing errors." I leaned over his screen. The problem was obvious. You're forcing the system to project 20 years of returns from 6 months of inputs. It can't calculate stability with that little history. Can you make it work anyway? I can make it stop showing errors. I can't make it accurate. He smiled like he thought he was charming. Just make it look right. The board doesn't care about back-end math. They care about confidence. I fixed the display, hiding the warnings. He didn't notice. By 2 o'clock, the boardroom was full. 12 members, all in suits. My father at the head. David to his right. Catherine to his left. I sat in the back corner with the AV equipment. The invisible technician. The meeting began. Numbers, charts, projections, all designed to impress. Then David took the floor. "We've been cautious for too long," he said. "It's time Harrison Financial takes bold steps. The Innovation Fund will position us at the forefront of emerging markets. Cryptocurrency, tech startups, global opportunities." Slides flashed across the wall. Shiny graphs. "Fake confidence. The projected returns," he continued, "are 300% over 20 years. I almost laughed. When Richard Chin, one of the outside board members, asked about risk management, David's answer was vague. That's when I spoke up. "The diversification model doesn't account for market correlation," I said from the corner. "If tech and crypto drop together, you're looking at a 50% loss potential, not 15. Heads turned. Silence. David's jaw tightened. "Emma, this is a board meeting, not an IT issue." "I'm aware," I said. "I just thought you'd prefer accurate data before risking $200 million, and he glared. "Maybe you should fix computers and let us handle finance." I met his eyes. "You're presenting fabricated projections, David. The data doesn't support your claims." My father's voice cut in, sharp. "Enough, Emma." But one of the board members, Maria Santos, spoke up. "Actually, I'd like to hear more from her." And just like that, everything began to shift. Every eye in the room turned toward me. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the projector. David's hand froze on his laptop, his confidence draining fast. Maria Santos, one of the more analytical board members, leaned forward. "Emma, go on." I stood, laptop still in hand. "The risk model for the Innovation Fund is based on incomplete data. The projections use 6 months of historical performance to estimate 20 years of returns." "That's statistically meaningless," David interrupted, voice sharp. "She's IT support. She doesn't have the background to make that judgment." "Actually," I said evenly, "I have a master's degree in financial engineering from MIT. Finished it while working here. Night classes. 4 years." The silence that followed was thick. My father turned in his chair, staring at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You never mentioned that." "You never asked," I said. Catherine blinked, clearly recalculating everything she thought she knew about me. Maria tapped her pen against the table. "So, Emma, what's your assessment?" "The Innovation Fund's projections ignore market correlation," I said. "Crypto and tech markets move together. If one collapses, the other follows. Your projected downside risk of 15% should be closer to 60. The model also ignores volatility clustering. That's not strategy, that's wishful thinking." David's face went red. You're out of line. Or maybe I'm just the only one who's read the data. Enough. My father's voice filled the room. This is a shareholders' meeting, not a lecture. Maria didn't flinch. Mr. Harrison, with respect, your daughter just identified a critical flaw in a $200 million proposal. I'd like to see her analysis. David was breathing fast, trying to recover control. This is ridiculous. The board doesn't take direction from IT. The door opened. Everyone turned. An older man stepped in, gray hair, precise movements, leather briefcase in hand. I recognized him immediately. James Morrison, senior partner of Morrison & Associates. My grandfather's attorney. Morrison, my father said, surprised. What are you doing here? He set the briefcase on the table and opened it calmly. I'm here because this board is about to vote on a transfer of assets that requires authorization from the portfolio's legal owner. I'm the owner, my father said automatically. I've managed these assets for 30 years. You've managed them, Morrison said. You've never owned them. He took out a thick folder and placed it in front of my father. This is the Harrison Asset Trust. Your father established it 18 years ago. Upon his death, the ownership of the firm's managed portfolio transferred to Emma Harrison, effective on her 23rd birthday. The words landed like a detonation. David shot up from his chair. That's impossible! Catherine stared at the document, her face pale. You're saying the entire portfolio, $500 million in assets, Morrison said, belongs to Emma Harrison. The company manages those assets on her behalf. This is absurd, my father said. My father left the company to me. He did, Morrison agreed. He left you the business structure, the brand, the client relationships. But the assets themselves, the actual money, belong to Emma. No, David said, voice shaking. No way. We've been managing those assets for 6 years. With Emma's implicit authorization, Morrison said. The trust allows management under her ownership. Any major restructuring, however, requires her explicit approval, like transferring $200 million into a new investment fund. My father looked at me, eyes wide. You knew? Yes. For how long? 3 years. He repeated it softly, as if testing the words. 3 years? David slammed his fist on the table. You lied to us. I didn't lie, I said. I just didn't correct your assumptions. You spied on us, he shouted. You had access to everything. That's my job, I said. I'm the IT administrator. I maintain every system. Every file you've created passed through my servers. Catherine's voice was barely above a whisper. You've been watching us. I've been learning, I said. Understanding how my portfolio was being managed. David's face twisted with anger. Your portfolio? You've been sitting in a basement fixing our computers while we built this company. You built the company, I said. The assets you've been managing belong to me. You've delivered 4.2% average annual growth. The market average is 7.3. You've underperformed by over 3% for 6 years. That's $47 million in missed returns, the board murmured. Richard Chin, another director, scrolled through data on his tablet. She's right, he said quietly. The performance gap is significant. David turned on him. You're taking her side? I'm taking the side of the numbers, Richard said. My father rubbed his forehead. Thomas did this. My father set this up to bypass me. He trusted me, I said quietly. He said I understood systems. Catherine exhaled slowly. You've been preparing for this, watching us fail. I was hoping I wouldn't have to step in, I said. But then David decided to gamble $200 million on faulty math. This is manipulation, David said. You can't just take over. She can, Morrison said calmly. The trust gives Emma full authority. The vote cannot proceed without her approval. David was trembling. I'll challenge this in court. You'll lose, Morrison said. The trust was reviewed by 4 law firms. It's airtight. My father's voice was quiet now, almost hollow. Thomas didn't trust me. He respected you, Morrison said. He simply wanted the assets protected. The room was silent. Every board member was staring at me. Maria Santos broke the stillness. Emma, what are your intentions? I'll be ordering a full audit of all investment decisions made in the last 6 years, I said. Every transaction, every risk position. I want complete transparency. That could take months, Catherine said. Then it takes months, I said. I've already hired an external firm. My father looked up sharply. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for the possibility. David's voice cracked. What about my fund? It's rejected, I said. If you can build a revised proposal with realistic projections and real downside protection, I'll consider it. Consider? He spat. You'll consider what we do with the company we've built? I'll consider what you do with my money, I said. Richard Chin stood. I move that we table the Innovation Fund proposal pending redesign and new risk analysis. Maria raised her hand. Seconded. 7 hands went up. The motion passed. The meeting ended. People began gathering their things, whispering to each other, shooting me glances, some curious, some wary, some impressed. Catherine approached slowly. Emma, I didn't know. I know, I said. You could have told us. You wouldn't have listened. David stormed out without a word. My father stayed seated, staring at the trust papers. The weight of defeat sat heavy on his shoulders. Finally, he said, Your grandfather always said you were like him. I thought he meant quiet. Turns out he meant ruthless. He meant patient, I said. He nodded once, then stood and walked out, leaving me alone with the silence and the hum of the projector still running. For the first time, I wasn't invisible, and for the first time, they understood who really owned everything. The boardroom emptied, but I stayed. The air still carried the tension of everything that had just unfolded. The projector flickered, the last slide of David's failed presentation frozen on the screen. Innovation Fund, a vision for the future. The irony wasn't lost on me. I closed my laptop and exhaled. The past 3 years of silence had ended in a single meeting. Everything I'd prepared for was now set in motion. When I stepped into the hallway, I could hear voices echoing from the other end. David and Catherine. She's not running this place, David said, his tone sharp. I don't care what the papers say. She doesn't belong in that chair. She owns the assets, David. That gives her power, Catherine said. Power she doesn't deserve. She's a systems tech who got lucky. You might want to lower your voice, I said, walking up behind them. David turned. You think this makes you untouchable? No, I said. It makes me accountable. You embarrassed me in front of the board, he snapped. I corrected a mistake that would have cost $200 million. You humiliated Dad. He did that himself. I said. David stepped closer. You think this company will take orders from you? From the girl who used to fix the Wi-Fi? I don't need them to take orders, I said quietly. I just need them to follow the money. And the money follows me. Catherine stepped between us. Enough, both of you. She looked at me. You're making enemies fast. I'm cleaning house, I said. Enemies are part of the process. David walked off, muttering under his breath. Catherine watched him go, then turned to me. You're not wrong about the numbers, but you just detonated 30 years of hierarchy in 1 hour. It needed to happen. She nodded slowly. Maybe, just remember, in this family, power shifts fast. Watch your back. I always do. She left, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. I stood there for a long time, thinking about how fragile everything suddenly felt. The truth had given me leverage, but leverage without control is just tension waiting to snap. I walked back to the server room. My sanctuary. The hum of the machines greeted me like old friends. I sat on the floor, opened my laptop, and logged into the system dashboard. Thousands of transactions scrolled across the screen, each one a piece of the puzzle that made up the empire my grandfather built. At the top of the screen, a notification blinked. Unauthorized access attempt. 3:47 p.m. I clicked it open. Someone had tried to enter the restricted server cluster, the one only I could access. The login attempt came from the executive floor. David's account, of course. I opened the logs and traced the activity. He'd tried to access financial archives from 2 years ago, the files tied to the innovation division's past losses. I pulled them up myself. There it was, a string of transactions routed through a company called Maven Dynamics. I knew the name. A shell firm in Singapore. The amounts were small at first, hidden among legitimate trades. But over time they grew. Millions moved offshore disguised as R&D transfers. David wasn't just reckless. He was laundering company money. I sat back and stared at the screen. My pulse stayed steady. This was confirmation, not surprise. I'd suspected it months ago. I just hadn't had proof. Now I did. I opened a secure drive and began compiling evidence: transaction logs, server timestamps, encrypted correspondence. Everything tied to his credentials. Within an hour, I had a full digital trail. Then I drafted a message. To Maria Santos. CC, Richard Chin. Subject: Irregular financial activity, Harrison Innovation. Division attachment: evidence.zip. The email was short: Maria. I've found multiple discrepancies tied to the Innovation Division's account. Please review the attached data. Recommend internal investigation before next board session. Emma. I hit send. The servers hummed. Somewhere above, the world continued unaware. By the next morning, the boardroom was already buzzing again. Maria and Richard were there early, scrolling through the data I'd sent. My father entered a few minutes later, looking exhausted. David arrived last, pretending everything was normal. He smiled, shook hands, made small talk. Maria's voice cut through the noise. David, we need to discuss these transfers. The room went silent again. David froze. What transfers? She turned the screen toward him. Maven Dynamics, Singapore. You authorized these? His face twitched. That's a subsidiary vendor. R&D Consulting. No, Richard said. It's a shell corporation. No employees. No operations. It's a front. David's jaw clenched. Where did you get this? From your system logs, I said. His eyes met mine. Pure anger. You went through my files? They're company servers, I said. And technically my assets. He slammed his hand on the table. You're framing me. Then prove me wrong, I said. Maria looked at my father. Mr. Harrison, as CEO, you have to respond. My father didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was low. We'll open a formal investigation. David turned to him, stunned. You're siding with her? I'm siding with the company, my father said. If there's truth to this, we need to know. David laughed, but it was bitter. You're all being played. She wants control, and you're handing it to her. He stood up and stormed out of the room. The board members exchanged glances. Maria looked at me. You just started a war. I didn't start it, I said. He did when he used company funds as his personal bank. Richard closed his laptop. We'll handle the audit discreetly. But this won't stay quiet for long. I'm ready for that, I said. When the meeting ended, my father stopped me in the hallway. Emma, I turned. Whatever happens, don't destroy your brother. He destroyed himself, I said. He shook his head. Family doesn't survive this kind of thing. Maybe it shouldn't, I said. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights flickering outside the window. My phone buzzed with messages, Catherine trying to mediate, Maria updating me on the audit, and one unknown number that made me pause. The next morning started quietly, but it felt like calm before a storm. I reached the office early. The elevator doors opened to silence. The energy in the building had shifted overnight. People avoided eye contact. Whispers died when I passed. By 9, every department head had heard about the audit. David's name was already circulating in low voices. I entered my office, a small space beside the server room, and powered up my system. My inbox was full. Updates from the auditors, reports from the compliance team, and one flagged message marked confidential. It was from Maria Emma. Initial audit confirms unauthorized transfers totaling $38.7 million. Traces lead directly to Maven Dynamics and 2 other shell accounts in Hong Kong and Zurich. We're escalating to the board immediately. I leaned back in my chair. The evidence was irrefutable. David had been bleeding money out of the company for years. At 10 a.m., an emergency board meeting was called. Everyone gathered in silence. My father looked like he hadn't slept. Catherine was tense, her expression unreadable. David walked in last, his usual confidence cracked but not gone. "He didn't sit," Maria began. "Our forensic audit found multiple unauthorized transfers connected to accounts managed by David Harrison. Total value, $38.7 million. Funds were moved over a period of 4 years." The words hung heavy in the air. David broke the silence. "This is a setup," Richard spoke quietly. "We verified the data independently. The transfers were initiated with your credentials." "Those credentials were stolen," David said. "Access came from your device," Maria replied. "Multiple times." David's voice rose. "You think I'd be stupid enough to use my own terminal?" "You were careless enough," I said. He turned on me, eyes cold. "You've been waiting for this. You planned it." "I didn't have to," I said. "The truth planned itself." My father raised a hand. "Enough. David, I want to believe you, but these numbers don't lie. We'll have to suspend you pending investigation." "You're siding with her again?" "I'm siding with facts." David laughed bitterly. "Facts you can't even understand without her telling you what they mean." He looked at me. "You always wanted to prove you were smarter. Well, congratulations. You've destroyed this family." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass trembled. No one spoke for a full minute. Finally, my father said, "We'll notify the authorities." Maria nodded. "It's the only way to preserve corporate integrity." I said nothing. I just watched my father's hands, old, shaking slightly, as he signed the suspension order. When the meeting ended, Catherine followed me into the hall. "You could have stopped this quietly," she said. "I gave him chances," I said. "He kept digging deeper." She sighed. "You think this ends here?" "No. He won't walk away quietly." She looked at me for a long moment. "Neither will Dad." Later that afternoon, I was in the server room when the building lights flickered. Then my console went black. The main network dropped offline. I frowned. That wasn't normal. I rebooted the system, but the firewall controls were unresponsive. Then I saw it. A script was running on the backup servers, deleting audit files. A manual trigger. Someone inside the system. I traced the source. Executive floor again. A different account this time. My father's. I tried to terminate the process, but the access level was locked. He'd overridden admin control using emergency privileges reserved for the CEO. Within seconds, a month's worth of audit data vanished. I grabbed my phone and called him. He answered immediately. "Emma." "What are you doing?" "Protecting this family," he said. "You've made this public. David will go to prison." "He stole company funds. He's still my son." "He's my brother," I said, voice tight. "But he did this to himself." "You think you understand legacy, but you don't. I built this company from your grandfather's foundation. I kept it alive. I won't let you destroy it." "I'm saving it," I said. "You're exposing it." The line went dead. I stared at the server logs. He had erased digital records, but I had backups, encrypted, off-site. He didn't know. I restored the files from cold storage, watching them repopulate line by line. The servers hummed louder, like the machines knew what was happening. At 4 p.m., security notified me that David had returned to the building. He wasn't supposed to. His access was revoked, but somehow he'd bypassed the system. I checked the security feed. There he was, walking straight through the lobby, ignoring the guards' protests. He carried a laptop under one arm. I left the server room and took the stairs up. When I reached the main floor, I found him in the data center, typing furiously at a terminal. "David," I said. He didn't look up. "You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't be here." He hit enter. A red warning flashed across the screen. System purge initiated. "What did you do?" I demanded. "Leveling the field," he said. "If I go down, you lose everything too." I ran to the console, forcing a shutdown. The purge was spreading. Deletion protocols racing across servers. Years of data at risk. "You'll destroy the company," I shouted. He laughed. "Maybe it's better that way. Dad's legacy dies with us." I typed commands faster, rerouting power, isolating drives. My fingers moved on instinct. The hum of servers grew louder, fans spinning under stress. He reached to pull the main cable, but I caught his wrist. "Stop!" "Let go, Emma." "No!" We struggled for the cable. He yanked hard, and sparks shot from the port. The lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. When the power came back, he was gone. The cable lay on the floor. I turned back to the system. Half the servers were offline, but my encrypted backups were safe. I'd built them on a hidden node he didn't know existed. I restored the core functions. It took 20 minutes. When the system finally stabilized, I checked the logs. The purge had failed. The company was still alive. I sat on the floor, exhausted, listening to the slow rhythm of the machines. The family had cracked completely now. My father had turned defensive. David was desperate. Catherine was trying to hold what was left together. And me, I was now the only one in control of the truth. At midnight, I received an email from Maria. "Emma, the audit data you restored was critical. We've submitted it to federal investigators. Expect official contact soon. Also, keep your security protocols tight. Someone tried to access our private server from an external IP traced to your family estate." I stared at the screen. My father again. He wasn't trying to save the company anymore. He was trying to protect his son, even if it meant burning everything else down. I closed the email and opened my encrypted terminal. A single folder sat there labeled Legacy Directive. It was my grandfather's original letter, scanned and stored digitally. His final line echoed in my head. "When the time comes, protect the system, not the name." The sun hadn't risen yet, but the city outside was already alive. I sat by the window, the light from my laptop screen casting faint reflections on the glass. The folder labeled Legacy Directive was still open. I read my grandfather's words again and again. Protect the system, not the name. He hadn't built the company to preserve our surname. He'd built it to outlast us. The people were replaceable. The structure was what mattered. The machine kept running, even when its operators failed. I finally understood what he meant. By 8 o'clock, the news broke. Financial channels, online reports, and industry blogs, all covering the same headline. Harrison Financial under investigation for internal fraud. The story was everywhere. The leak came from the federal office Maria had contacted. The press named David directly. They mentioned irregular transfers, pending inquiries, and cooperation from internal sources. Within an hour, David's phone was off, his apartment locked, and his car missing. Catherine called me. "You need to stop this," she said, her voice low but firm. "He's still your brother." "I didn't start this," I said. "They'll arrest him. He stole millions." She hesitated. "You think Dad will forgive you when this is over?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness." There was a pause. Then she said, "He won't stop, Emma. He'll go down fighting." "I know." When I arrived at the office, the building was under quiet chaos. The board had called another emergency meeting. Security stood at every entrance. The company's name, once a symbol of control, now carried scandal. I walked into the boardroom. My father was already there, staring out the window. He didn't turn when I entered. "You've destroyed us," he said quietly. "I saved what mattered," I said. "You've humiliated your family. Publicly." "You covered for a criminal," I said. "You tried to erase evidence." I tried to protect what your grandfather built. He built a system. Not a lie. He turned finally, eyes sharp. You think you understand him? You never met the man I knew. He was ruthless. He made people fear him. He didn't protect systems, he controlled them. Then maybe that's what broke you, I said. He didn't reply. Maria and Richard entered next, followed by 2 federal agents. They carried briefcases and credentials. The room went silent as they introduced themselves. Federal Bureau of Financial Crimes, one said. We're here to execute a warrant regarding the misappropriation of funds. My father sat down slowly. You'll find what you're looking for in the audit files. The agent looked at me. You're Emma Harrison. Yes, your cooperation has been noted. You'll be needed as a material witness. David wasn't there. He'd fled the night before. By noon, the agents had collected data drives, hard copies, and personal devices. The company's servers were locked under federal seal. When they left, the boardroom felt empty. Catherine sat across from me, her voice flat. You won. Congratulations. This isn't about winning. It always is in this family, she said. You think being right will bring peace? It won't. It just changes who's left standing. I didn't want power, I said. Then you shouldn't have taken it. She stood and walked out. My father stayed seated. His eyes were distant, like he was already living in another time. You've proven your intelligence, he said. But intelligence doesn't build loyalty. Loyalty to what? A corrupt system? To blood, he said. To family. I looked at him for a long time. You taught me loyalty means silence. Grandfather taught me loyalty means truth. He didn't answer. When he left, I was alone. The city skyline stretched out in front of me, glass towers glinting under a cold sun. The company that bore our name was still standing, but it wasn't the same. The facade had cracked. The truth was visible now. That evening, I returned to the server room. My space. The hum of machines welcomed me again. I plugged in my laptop and accessed the private node. Everything was still there. The backups, the evidence, the encrypted archives. But something new appeared in the system. A message file, timestamped just 30 minutes earlier. Sender. Unknown. I opened it. Emma, you've proven capable. You exposed corruption, preserved structure, and maintained integrity under pressure. Your grandfather's trust holds another layer you have not yet accessed. The final key activates upon the firm's full audit resolution. When that occurs, you will gain control of Harrison Global Holdings, the parent corporation. The system is now yours. Protect it. It was signed, J.M., James Morrison, the attorney. I stared at the message. My breath caught. Harrison Global wasn't just the company. It was the holding entity controlling 7 subsidiaries across 3 countries. My grandfather had hidden another layer beneath everything we knew. He had planned all of this. The trust, the delay, the test. It wasn't about inheritance. It was about qualification. I accessed the encrypted directory labeled HG Holdings. The access prompt appeared. Enter key sequence. I entered the code my grandfather had written in his final note. The screen flickered, then loaded a list of assets and structures, subsidiaries, offshore accounts, real estate, technology divisions, patents. It was all there. The full empire. I sat back, overwhelmed but calm. The machine was intact. The structure survived. Outside, the world kept moving. Markets reacted. Reporters speculated. But inside the server room, everything was quiet. At midnight, the security cameras captured a lone figure walking through the lobby. My father. He stood at the front doors, looking up at the Harrison Financial logo one last time. Then he left. He never came back. 2 weeks later, federal investigators confirmed the audit's findings. David was charged in absentia. My father resigned. Catherine took a leave of absence. The board appointed an interim CEO. They offered the role to me. I declined. I didn't need a title. Titles could be revoked. Ownership couldn't. I stayed where I belonged, in the server room, watching the heartbeat of the company through the pulse of code and data. The world saw the fall of a family. I saw the evolution of a system. I opened my grandfather's file one last time. His words closed the story. The Harrisons were never meant to rule. We were meant to maintain. Wealth fades. Names fade. Systems endure. Protect the system, Emma. Always. The servers hummed softly. Lines of code ran across the screen like quiet music. I closed the laptop and whispered into the glow of the monitors, "I will," and the system kept running.